fly chick coming through. Nice to meet you, glad you came too. Like you said, when you know you got moves. You spit game and you know you spit.
Hello and welcome back to the Fast Lane Collective. Today we're kind of changing it up. I'm sitting in the hosting seat. I'm Daniella, for those who don't know, and I'm joined by Brianna. And Brianna usually hosts. So Brianna, does it feel a little bit strange that you're not the one hosting today?
It does. It feels a little weird, but I'm okay with it. I love this switch up. I mean, it's summer break. We're switching things up.
Yeah. I thought that I could kind of take a hand at what Brianna does. So welcome back to this episode. We're kind of going to do things a little bit differently. I think most of you kind of listen to our podcast. You know that we often do kind of wrap-ups of a race, delve into the biggest stories. But this time we're going to kind of just delve into one thing. We're going to have a look at Cadillac and their entrance into Formula One. But before we begin, Brianna, I wanted to see how you are.
I'm doing good. Work has just cranked up. It's very busy, so I'm very busy naturally because of that. I know, it's been so crazy, all three of our schedules recently, so we're really kind of switching it up this whole summer. We've done some solo episodes just to see how that went. I did one, Yasmin did one, the last two episodes, so go check those out. Let us know if you like the solo vibes sometimes or if you don't like it at all, which is totally okay too, because we're not sure if we like it or we love it. We're not sure. But yeah, it's just been really busy summer, traveling. It's just crazy. I feel like everyone's like, oh, waiting for summer. You're like, oh, summer's gonna be so relaxing. I can't wait for summer. And then see, I'm yawning. That's how exhausted I am. Summer's just crazy and it flies by like that. And I feel like it's flying by. We're already in August, which is crazy. But how are you? Because I know you wrapped up your time with Formula E with the season wrapping up a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, so things were very busy for me at the start of the summer. I worked on the British Grand Prix and then I had to wrap up Formula E and that was very busy. I had my first experience on site for the whole of the London E Prix weekend and it was the best weekend ever. I had such a great time. But yeah, it all kind of kicked off and got very busy and then I had to kind of step away from the podcast a little bit so I could kind of focus on work stuff. But now the season has officially wrapped up, and also so has, unfortunately, my job. I have now kind of entered a new phase of unemployment, but I'm going into it in a positive mindset. Things are looking good. I can dedicate more time to the podcast, which I'm very excited about, which is kind of why I'm leading today's episode, because I had a lot more time to do some research today. But I'm kind of thinking I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to get another job, it'll all be fine. It's looking likely that I'll do Formula E again next season. So there's things to look forward to. But I want to dive straight in because I have so many thoughts about Cadillac entering Formula One. So Brianna, I want to hear your thoughts. As an American, how does it feel to have another American team enter Formula One?
It's almost like hesitant. I'm excited for the possibilities, but also very nervous for them as well. And I'll explain why I'm kind of feeling those two feelings. One, it's exciting that we'll have another American team back in Formula One, obviously alongside Haas. But it's nerves and a little hesitancy because I just don't want it to be a big old flop and failure. It makes me so nervous because, normally American drivers and recently American teams haven't done so hot in the Formula One world in the recent years. I just want them to succeed so badly. And I know building a Formula One team and putting that Formula One team out on the track to compete is no small task. So as an American, I'm 50% excited, 50% nervous, but we'll see if that, the nerves go away as we, get closer and closer to the 2026 season.
I definitely agree with you. It is hard when you know that coming into Formula One is a big deal and there's a lot of pressure, but you kind of know like you can't go into it with like high expectations, because ultimately the teams are definitely at kind of that starting point of figuring out how they're going to make this happen and how they're going to get the results that they want. And you can't expect them to come out with race wins straight off the bat. And we saw that a lot with Haas. Like, it's taken Haas from 2016 till kind of now to start to kind of gain a little bit of success. Like, they had success, then it kind of dropped, and then it's come back a bit. And I feel like Cadillac might have kind of a similar story. It's obviously not going to be smooth sailing. It isn't for any Formula One team. And coming into Formula One is going to be difficult, regardless of if you are well known within motorsport or not. But Brian, I wanted to ask you, like, what do you think the difference is between Cadillac coming in now versus Haas in 2016? Obviously, back then, there wasn't as big of a fan base in the States for F1. It's definitely grown during that time with the likes of Drive to Survive and obviously Haas being an American team. Do you think that this is going to propel the sport even more? Do you think that the fans are going to be even more engaged with the likes of Cadillac?
Yeah, I think really for me, obviously Cadillac as a brand has a very big heritage here. It also has a very big heritage in the NASCAR world. Obviously GM is also back. GM, Cadillac, same, but different. They're just choosing, Cadillac is basically that luxury name brand that they're choosing to move forward with Formula One. But I think we could see, when it comes to popularity and fandom, I think this might bring over some of those people that are a little bit more devoted to IndyCar and NASCAR. I think the fact that like this name like Cadillac, that's been such a heritage legacy name in those sports, is coming into this sport. I think we could see some people from NASCAR and IndyCar coming over and just like checking it out a little bit to see what it's like, because Cadillac is now in the game here. So I think we could see that. Obviously, I think we might see American fans supporting, but I don't think we'll see a huge, big jump. I think the appeal to a lot of American fans about Formula One is it's not American. So I don't see like all of a sudden all the American fans supporting Cadillac, and especially because you have Cadillac and Haas. We've never seen like a huge American following with Haas. We've never and I think some people even forget sometimes that Haas is an American team, to be honest with you. But we haven't seen like that kind of fandom take hold with that team. I think we could see it with Cadillac if Cadillac does this right in a PR and marketing sense. I think we could see that happen, but I think it's very much in their hands as to how that plays out. So yeah, that's kind of how I feel about like the fandom on that side of things. I don't know if it'll change a whole lot, but it'll definitely spice things up. And then you asked a question before, which has now escaped my mind. Can you remind me?
I think that was the question. Like how do you think it differs between Haas?
Oh,
especially
with
the
okay.
yeah. But I think like you kind of did answer that a little bit, and I was just going to touch on your point about like the PR standpoint. Do you think that Cadillac and GM are going to kind of lean in towards that American like fan base, and obviously the fact that they are American, where like Haas didn't do it to the extent that I think everyone was expecting? Like, they have showcased it at times, they've had liveries that have obviously like nodded to America, but do you think that the appeal right now would be as if they were to fully like dive into the American culture?
That's so it's a little tricky a question. I think it's more of a decision Cadillac needs to make. Are we going full Americana and bringing that to the F1 grid, or are we here to be a part of the F1 grid and be a part of the world, and kind of blend in seamlessly with everyone else? I think it's an interesting. America and Formula One are kind of like two opposites, especially when it comes to motorsports culture. I think European car culture and American car culture, two very, very different things. And that also has to do with like the cars that were made in the United States years and years ago and the cars that have been made in Europe. So I think that's where it like comes at a clash a little bit. Is like F1 wants to be this classy, high-end, exclusive event, where America is very much about like one team all together. Everyone's included. Like car culture and motorsports is for every man and woman. But for the rich and the poor, for kind of that. And that's where I think those two things might clash, and where Cadillac's PR and marketing team might have a bit of an issue of how to either bring those two things together or decide what road they're going to go down when it comes to that. Because Cadillac in itself, like as a car manufacturer, I mean, especially in the United States, has such prestige and kind of nostalgia around the old antique cars that Cadillac used to produce and make. So it is interesting, and I'm interested to see what way they decide to go with that. And I don't think I've seen anything concrete so far as to which way they're pointing at this moment.
I do agree with you, and I think when you have teams come in who have such rich history in other forms of motorsport, it is going to kind of blur the lines a little bit of like, how is this going to fit in with what F1 are doing? And I do think that F1 is trying to kind of be that little bit more inclusive and accessible. There are many ways that they could definitely improve on that. So I feel like that we might kind of be able to start to see some similarities align between Cadillac and F1. But I think it kind of was a little bit of a shock, but also not, with their announcement of their entrance. We know that Andretti tried to come in. They've now kind of teamed up a little bit with Cadillac to kind of pursue this. And it's like, okay, no matter what, it seems like we're going to get an American team. Like, we can't defy this any longer. They tried against Andretti. They've obviously let Cadillac in. I think that it could change the way, the dynamic of the sport, especially with like the surgence of fans in the States. But I'm hoping it's going to be for the better and not for the worse. And I think that, with the likes of kind of making this a bit more accessible, you're going to have more fans interested. As you said, Brianna, like the NASCAR and IndyCar fans coming in, and they're going to recognise those names. General Motors, Cadillac, Andretti. They're going to be like, okay, these names are familiar to me. Here's kind of why I should like look into this a bit more. Yeah. And I think that's like with other championships. So I know that in Formula E, for example, we've had the likes of McLaren, Andretti, Mercedes were in it in the past, and those names are kind of what brought fans in. They're like, oh, I know that name. I'm going to check this out and see what they're up to. And I have a feeling that could be the case, as you've kind of already touched on already.
Yeah.
But
I think too, like as I hear you talking about this, and you mentioned those names in Formula E, I think if we want to look at a most recent example of a brand that's kind of like transferred itself to an American heavy motorsport racing thing, you can look at McLaren, how they've gone into IndyCar and kind of transformed themselves a bit to fit into that space. And not tried to like come in and be like, we're McLaren. I mean, we don't see like the likes of any other supercar brands like Lamborghini coming into IndyCar. Like, so they kind of were this like outlier brand that was coming into a space where you saw mostly like, how would I say it? Like the people's car brands, like Ford, Mustang. I'm wearing my Shelby shirt today. Like, they were a disruptor, but I think they did a really good job of like fitting in the space that they were in, instead of kind of like bringing this like high class kind of feeling that comes with these types of cars like McLarens or Lamborghinis and stuff like that. And the brand's reputation in itself is that very different from a Ford Mustang reputation. So I think that's a good example if you want to look at like how to transfer a brand to a different series. I think McLaren did that well and has done it successfully.
Absolutely. I think the only thing that they properly brought in from F1 was how cutthroat the sport can be. And I think that was very much showcased over the last few seasons. But moving on to kind of like the personnel within the team, kind of towards the end of 2024, heading into 2025, there have been like a few announcements of people who are kind of going to be at the forefront of the team. Not so yet drivers, but we will come on to that in a little bit. But I kind of wanted to talk about team principals. So Graham Loudon has been announced as the team principal for Cadillac, and he used to be CEO of the Virgin and also the Mauritia F1 teams. So they're choosing already personnel that have experience within this sport. And I just kind of wanted to touch on this a little bit and ask you, Brianna, like, why do you think right now it's quite crucial for Cadillac to ensure that they have got people within their team who know Formula One, they've been in it before, rather than kind of starting up with someone who maybe hasn't been in the Formula One world and has come from the likes of NASCAR and IndyCar? Like, does this kind of prove your point about them kind of fitting into the F1 space?
Yeah, I think it was really smart of them to bring people on that have not just been involved in Formula One before, but have been involved in bringing teams into Formula One before. I think it's really, really crucial, and something that Haas, I think, was lacking when they entered Formula One was a solid foundation and a solid team that at least a good chunk of that team had a knowledge of what it was about to take. Obviously, Gunther Steiner has F1 history, so it's not like they were going in completely blind. But I think also Haas was approaching it a little differently. They were creating a car from pieces, like a Lego set, basically, which F1 teams don't often do. They make everything themselves, they produce it themselves, and they put it together. Where Haas was like, I'm going to buy this from Mercedes, this power unit from Ferrari, this suspension from Renault, and I'm just going to like put this car together. Where I think the reason that kind of put them on the back foot was they were building the ship while sailing it kind of situation. And I think Cadillac is doing a good job of bringing people in that have, one, done this before. They know what it takes and they know how hard it's going to be. But two, also just starting to build the solid foundation of that group and set it up for success, and not try to like sail it as you're trying to build it, basically. Or in this case, drive it around a track as you're trying to build it. What do you think, Daniela, about how Cadillac has seemed to start kind of building this team and the foundation of how they're going to start their whole Cadillac team?
I think they're being very clever because they are definitely choosing the right people, and also people, as you said, who have experience in kind of starting up a team, but also have experience just in general in Formula One. So they've also brought on Nick Chester and Pat Simmons, who are big names in the Formula One space and have been a part of Formula One for a very long time. Nick Chester is going to be the Chief Technical Officer. He used to be an engineer at Benetton and Renault and Lotus. So he's had a lot of experience within the Formula One world, and like his most recent role, or one of his most recent roles, was that he was the technical director of Mercedes Formula E team. So he's obviously been involved within this space for a long time and has the experience, and I think that, as you said, is quite crucial right now. I think if they were to have brought in people from NASCAR, for example, it might not have the same fit, and I think that kind of is proven by Gunther Steiner with Haas. He had some Formula One experience. He used to, I think, be with Red Bull, but it was very clear that he came from a different form of motorsport and was then trying to fit and mould his team into what he wanted, but it wasn't exactly the kind of needs that Formula One was looking for, and I just think that kind of started Haas off on the wrong foot. So I think this could definitely be a new way that they can bring a fresh idea to Cadillac, and obviously it's going to make sense if you use people who've already done Formula One before. That's kind of a no-brainer and what you kind of need to start off a team, because to me, I don't know, it just seems like common sense. If you were to bring people in who've never worked on Formula One before as you're starting up a new team, might kind of scream a little bit of red flags. But kind of touching on a little bit of red flags, I mentioned the name Pat Simmons. Brianna, does this name ring a bell to you at all?
It does. But to be honest with you, I might be running on exhaustion right now, so I can't recall 100% why it's ringing a bell, but it is.
If I say the words Crashgate, does that help?
Yes, it does. now it's all coming back to me now. How could I have forgotten that?
So for those who are like, what is Crashgate? What are you talking about? Who is Pat Simmons? So Pat Simmons was a race engineer, and he was a part of Renault. And during the time that Crashgate happened, which was during I think it was the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix, Nelson Piquet Jr. crashed. And at the time, people didn't really think much of it. He just crashed in a race. But he then later claimed that he was asked by Pat Simmons to crash so that Fernando Alonso could win the race. And this is how Crashgate came about. And it's caused a lot of controversy since he kind of spoke about it in 2009 up until now. It's still a big topic of conversation that pops up every now and again in the Formula One space. But Pat then kind of had a little bit of a slight downfall because of his name being brought up as the reasoning as to why Nelson Piquet Jr. crashed. He then was let go by the team and was then on a 5-year ban from F1 events. However, that was then kind of retracted 4 months later after the ban was given. And he has been since, like, in Formula One a lot. Since then, like, he was a part of F1, like, themselves for a bit. He's worked with Sky Sports F1. He worked with Williams for a long time. So he has still been in the world. But Brianna, this is not the first person that we've seen come back into the Formula One space after quite a controversy. We've seen it with Flavio Briatore, who is now technically the team principal of Alpine. What are your thoughts on kind of bringing in these controversial figures back into Formula One?
Oh, it doesn't surprise me. It really doesn't. Like, this is one of the only sports I know of where you can openly be convicted of something. Look at, Flavio Briatore went from a lifetime ban from Formula One to all of a sudden now being a team principal again. It's comical. So I would say it doesn't surprise me. If Flavio Briatore can pull that off, then Pat can be involved in another team again. Like, it's just not impossible. I mean, of course, teams need to take these things into consideration. And I'm sure this was discussed before bringing him on as to, like, you can't do anything like this ever again. If you did do this, like, this isn't, the game anymore. I'm sure those conversations were had for sure at Cadillac. But I think Cadillac are looking for people, like you said, with experience. They want people with experience. And sometimes those people with experience, sometimes they've done some stuff that's a little shady. But, I mean, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, he did make a mistake in the past, obviously, but one mistake does not make a man's entire life. So it's been a long time since then, and I hope he's changed his ways. But, I mean, we'll see how he plays out. Like you said, he's been involved in Formula One since that incident, and his name has not been brought up in any other sus type of situations. So, by all means, I'm sure he will do a great job for Cadillac, and his experience will for sure help them through navigating what they're about to go through and entering the sport. So what do you think about this? Because this question is like double-sided. It's like, okay, are your feelings about Crashgate going to like carry into this scenario now, or is it just like, I don't know. How do you feel about it as a fan?
I'm not really too sure, because I think that Crashgate was such a big part of Formula One at the time that it kind of feels like it's not something that we're fully over. It's more something that's kind of just been brushed under the carpet, and every now and again someone lifts up that carpet and goes, oh yeah, that happened. I just think I kind of mentioned this because of the year that we've had in Formula One. We've lost 2 team principals this year to kind of big controversies, and I kind of just wanted to, like, not kind of bring up like stuff from the past, but it just felt like I needed to kind of ask this question and hear your thoughts on this. You know, Christian Horner has recently been fired. We've had the whole Oliver Oak situation towards like the start of the season, and it's all just a little bit weird of a timing that I was like, I kind of need to mention this and see what you think. But yeah, I think I'm at a point now where I feel like we can kind of move past it. As we said, like, he's been involved in Formula One pretty much since, and his 5-year ban was retracted, so I feel like that kind of shows like a bit of a testament to who he is and the kind of the faith that the FIA and Formula One have in him. I just found it kind of an interesting fact that, you know, he was part of one of the biggest controversies in the sport and is now part of a new team that's coming in the same way that Flavio Briatore was banned from F1 for a lifetime and now is team principal.
It literally, like, it makes me, I was trying to think of what other sport have I seen this kind of thing go down, and I mean, we see it a lot of times, like, people accused of pretty horrible things, and somehow they still make a reappearance, and I mean, I think this just all goes back to, like, sometimes if you're really good at your job, people are willing to look past certain things. I mean, Flavio Briatore, I'm actually reading a lot about the history of F1 right now, so a lot of these things are coming back to me. But, like, I think I said this in a prior podcast, or maybe to one of you, like, reading about what he did with, like, you know, what he's done in his past, also just Bernie Ecclestone as well. Like, part of me is, like, has some weird business respect for them in a way, because I'm like, dang, you did that. like, whoa, like, no one saw that opportunity and you, like, took it. Like, if you really look back at some of the things, like, and it also makes you wonder, like, wow, like, your expertise have been so kind of, like, shadowed by this one instance, but in this case, like, I think this is a really good example of, like, well, if you're really good at your job, we can look past some things. And like you said, I hope he has turned a new leaf and, like, he's gained the trust back of the people that work in the sport. Obviously he has, because I don't think his name would be thrown around otherwise. But yeah, it's kind of crazy. Formula One is crazy. It's unlike any other sport. If you guys haven't read the book just titled Formula One, go read it. It's so good, and that's what I'm reading right now, and really learning and digging deep into a lot of this history, and also finding out, like, a lot of these names that you hear now that are kind of disgraced Formula One names, how they've contributed to the sport in the past. And you have to think to yourself, like, man, if that didn't happen, where would F1 be today? So it's a crazy world, this Formula One. It really is. It really, really is.
That's a very good way of looking at it, of, like, if all of these incidents hadn't have happened, where would we be with this sport? And I think, like, a lot of the time I think about that in terms of the halo and how, you know, how many lives that we could have lost if the halo hadn't have been introduced. And there were so many people who were against the halo who have now come out and spoken about how was the best thing for the sport, Toto Wolff being one of them. So I think, yeah, that's a really interesting perspective. And I definitely want to check out that Formula One book because I have not read it.
So
and
good.
You know that I love Formula One history, so I'm going to be all over it.
And it's actually, like, I'm sorry, small plug for this book. I promise they're not sponsoring me. But what I love about this book is you really get into the history, but also, like, it's written by 2 New York Times sports journalists, but they infuse that, like, funny fan, like, stuff that we all know and love, and, like, the delusions that we know are out there with some of these teams and some of this history. They acknowledge it in it, so there's some nice humor sprinkled in there as well. So I think if you love Formula One, this is a good book to read, and I know you would enjoy it 100%. So, okay, that's enough with my book.
Well, I will definitely check it out. But I think, what you've said is really interesting. And also you beat me to it about mentioning Bernie Ecclestone. So well done there.
Bernie Ecclestone also is one of those people that is like a disgraced name, but still finds his way into almost everybody and everything in Formula One. I don't understand it. He's just there.
He is. I don't understand either. But another very interesting character. And yeah, we will probably do like proper episodes kind of like going into these characters. I know that we've been talking for a long time about doing one about Flavio Briatore. I just find that man very interesting, and maybe not always in a good way, but I really wanted, like, I keep using the words deep dive, but I'm just going to carry on. I really want to deep dive into his whole F1 journey, his whole career, his lifestyle, how he came to be who he is, his resurgence back into Formula One this year. I find it all so fascinating. So I'm like, how can you cause all of this drama and still get back in? And like you said, Brianna, it's probably because they were good at their jobs and people look past it. But also, and I hate to be that person, but it's also probably because they are men. And that unfortunately is the truth.
Yeah, that's an unfortunate truth. Yeah, they're very much a part of this, like, old man's club of Formula One that's still around. They're still there.
Yeah. Even though we're trying to move away from it, we're trying to make the sport more inclusive and diverse, and there's, like, a big kind of head on getting more women involved, there will still be that kind of old man, rich, white man, privileged kind of group that will forever remain in Formula One. I think even when they pass away in years to come, that kind of vibe will still be a part of the sport. It is what kind of made the sport initially to begin with. And as much as we kind of want to deter from that, we also have to be like, okay, this is where Formula One started. And as much as I really don't want to massively honour white, rich men, sometimes we have to be grateful for the sport that we have. But moving back onto Cadillac, we also know that they're going to be using Ferrari's powertrain. Now, this is not the first time that Ferrari have lent their powertrain to an American team coming into Formula One for the first time, as they have done that with Haas, and they still have a deal with Haas. It started in 2016. It's rumoured to end in 2028, but who knows, it could still be extended. The difference here with Cadillac is that they are very keen to make their own powertrain, but to kind of start off, they need a little bit of support and help, and that's why they brought in Ferrari. Aside from the money aspect, Brianna, why do you think Ferrari are kind of happy to lend out their powertrains?
I mean, money. It all comes down at the end of the day to money. They've got another team on the grid that's going to give them a decent amount of cash to provide them with a powertrain, a whole thing. I mean, it's good business. And it's also good to say that multiple cars on the track have your engine in there. It evokes a lot of trust. I think if a lot of us remember like the fall of Renault power unit, like kind of like how everyone used it and then all of a sudden nobody used it. So I think it's just like a good business play for them. More money coming in. I think they've had a good relationship as well with Haas when it comes to the power unit. And also, I wouldn't be shocked if there's a little bit of other partnership going on behind the scenes as well. Kind of like the deal that Haas has with Ferrari, with their junior drivers. Hey, you give us an engine and you give us some testing spots for our juniors and we'll help you out. Is I think probably what we'll see with them, very similar to how Haas is. But yeah, I mean, you're not going to turn down a big old fat check for something literally Ferrari has been known for doing from the dawn of time, is making good engines. I mean, Enzo Ferrari was classically quoted saying, aerodynamics is for people who can't build engines. So, I mean, if you want someone to build your engine, it's probably them at this point.
Yeah, that's very true. And I think, the point that you kind of brought up that really piques my interest there is the junior drivers. We're yet to know who Cadillac are going to choose for their drivers, but you know, we've now seen people from the Ferrari Driver Academy be able to kind of make their way up and have joined Haas. Ollie Behrman is an example there. Mick Schumacher is another example of drivers who have kind of been under that Ferrari program, who've then been able to transition into Formula One, but jumping straight into a Ferrari is proven to be quite difficult, and having kind of that almost like stepping stone has been really useful. And now we might have an opportunity where another team can offer those services, because as I've said, Cadillac aren't going to be, or I don't imagine them to be, they could go and now prove me wrong, but I don't think they're going to be a race winning team in their debut season. Cadillac, please prove me wrong on that. But I think that, you know, they need to have kind of that, their first few seasons are going to be them kind of getting used to it, and I think that's why they're going with choosing to use a powertrain that already exists for the first few seasons, so that they don't need to worry about that. They can put their time and energy into creating their own without having to worry about creating one for next year or the first few seasons that they're going to be in it. So I think that was clever of them to kind of come and decide that quite early on, especially choosing to go with Ferrari, who have pretty solid powertrain. They might not always have the strategy, but they do have a pretty good powertrain, and I think it's a good place for them to start with. But as I've mentioned, the one thing that we really don't know about Cadillac is who is going to be their driver lineup for their debut season. Brianna, have you been hearing any names being mentioned?
I mean, I feel like everyone's name has been thrown into the ring for this possible seat. I think, let me give you my predictions. I mean, obviously Sergio Perez's name has been flying around. I think that makes sense. He's not an American, but I mean, he has had a phenomenal race record besides his hiccup at Red Bull, but I think it's really being revealed now that that wasn't necessarily all his fault. As we've seen the results of all the other drivers after him. Yes, there has been more than one. And the struggles that they're seeing in that car. So I think the performance he gave there can be forgiven a bit now that it's kind of coming to light that it wasn't him. So he's definitely a good possibility. I don't know. This is like also just... I just don't know. I just don't know with him. Also because, and this is going to be, here we go. It's going to get a little political here, so hold your horses with me. I mean, United States and Mexico right now aren't necessarily the best of friends. And also Sergio Perez ties with a lot of some of the sponsors. He has... it can be a tad questionable as to like who really backs those types of companies. Cough, cough, Mexican oil. So I think it could be, if anything, a hurdle for them brand-wise to bring a driver who is Mexican, but also very, very proud Mexican. I personally have no problem with it, but as a person in the marketing world, it would be interesting to see how that would play, especially on their like debut season. And with the tensions being so high right now with the United States. And I just also, like I said earlier, a lot of their fans and people that are fans of the Cadillac brand do come from the NASCAR, IndyCar background. So it could be interesting there. Valtteri Bottas has also been a name that's been rumored, which I think makes a lot of sense. He's been even teasing it himself, if anybody saw his Cadillac post he made a couple of weeks ago. And I think, I truly do think he is basically, the ink is dry on his contract at this point. With Cadillac, I don't think he would make a video like that if it wasn't pretty much a done deal, because then you'd kind of look a little silly if it wasn't. But great PR move from Valtteri Bottas, honestly. If that was like a way to advertise himself for Cadillac, then well done, my friend. Like, he's just killing the social media PR game now in this era, so he's doing great. I know people are like wishing and wanting for Daniel Ricciardo to be an F1 driver for Cadillac. I mean, that would make so much sense, but that's not going to happen. I hate to crush everyone's hopes and dreams. I do not think we'll see Daniel Ricciardo ever back in Formula One again. But I mean, if he was interested, that would have been the perfect. I mean, he's basically like Valtteri Bottas is an honorary Australian. Daniel Ricciardo is like an honorary American. Like it would just be like peanut butter and jelly with those two. But I don't think he's coming back. I guess really like to wrap up kind of my thoughts around these drivers is the one thing I am curious about is, are we going to take the risk on a rookie in one of these seats? And who would be the question for me. Obviously, we know we don't have unlimited money, and drivers are very expensive, as well as the car. Those are the two big expenses, the car and the driver. So I'll be interested to see kind of how they play that out. If they're going to bring two experienced ones to give them the best chances, or if they're going to go experienced and rookie. What do you think, Daniela?
I hope they're going to go experienced and rookie, mostly because I want to get as many rookies on the grid as possible. But also I can kind of see from a different perspective of just, obviously the money perspective of like, they're not going to have the world's biggest budget because they haven't been in Formula One to kind of build up that budget. So kind of going with a rookie would help that. But I also, if they want to get results early on and they want to progress the team, like, bringing in someone like Valtteri Bottas, who's been working with Mercedes kind of behind the scenes in that kind of simulator role, taking on board those like opportunities, I think could be quite beneficial for building Cadillac up like kind of from the ground up. He has a lot of experience in Formula One, so I think that could be a really strong possibility and quite a likelihood. Even if we take away his whole Cadillac post, I think that, you know, if I was Cadillac right now, that'd be someone I'd definitely be looking at and be kind of wanting to bring onto the team, because he has so much experience. He knows what he's doing in a Formula One car. He's proven that he can go and work with different powertrains and different teams, and he has proven in his career. So that I would kind of hope that Valtteri is an option, but I would also like for them to bring in a rookie. I have a list of 11 names that I have seen popped up.
11 names?
11 names around these two seats. Daniel Ricciardo is not on my list. Daniel Ricciardo will not be back in Formula One. I hate to be the one to say that. I know it for a fact. I know that this is true. He does not want to come back to Formula One. So if you're like, why you're Daniel Ricciardo's biggest fan, why are you not saying his name? That is because I know he's not making a return to Formula One or to Motorsport. So let's kind of like leave that at the door. We don't need to keep bringing him back up. Yeah. He doesn't want to be back. Let's just respect his decision. He's out living his best life. Let's leave him to it.
I think people are literally just trying to like manifest him coming back. Like, I think everyone knows in their heart it's never going to happen, but people are like, well, if I put it out there in the world. But you're right.
I love the enthusiasm and I love the manifestation, but let's like let this man live his life outside of motorsport, because that's what he wants.
He wants to go find himself.
Yes, outside of his career, which is what I'm also doing in this moment of unemployment. But bringing it back to these drivers, the 11 names that I have, it's a mixture of ex-F1 drivers and also IndyCar drivers.
Got it, I'll keep count.
Sergio Perez, Valtteri Bottas, Felipe Dragovic, Zhou Guanyu, Mick Schumacher, Alex Palou, Colton Herta, Kyle Kirkwood, Jack Crawford, Connor Zilisch, and Scott McLaughlin. So there are a lot of names there, and some names that are really big in Formula One, IndyCar, other motorsport championships. And I think, you know, people are kind of hoping for an American driver, which is why there's a lot of IndyCar names within this mix. And I understand and I appreciate that. But I think in this day and age, it's quite rare for a driver to go from IndyCar to F1. Now, I know that I think it was maybe 3 years ago. It could have been a little bit longer. I can't remember. Colton Herta's name was brought up a lot. And he was kind of looking like he was possibly going to AlphaTauri. Didn't quite happen. he didn't have enough super license points, and then they were going to like look past that, and in the end, ultimately, he didn't get picked up. But I think he is kind of a firm favourite, especially of the American fans, to bring in. But then there's people on this list, like Scott McLaughlin, who's been such a big name in IndyCar for such a long time, like such an iconic human that I know people would love to see him in Formula One. But a name that really stands out for me is Zhou Guanyu. And my reasoning behind this is Graham Loden, who is going to be the team principal for Cadillac, is Zhou Guanyu's manager.
Oh,
did you know that?
Oh, I did not know that.
I didn't know that until today either. So I think that's quite interesting.
Yeah, because when you mentioned Zhou Guanyu on that list, I was like, my thinking was, because he has experience. But that makes a lot more sense now.
So do you think that the lineup could be Valtteri Bottas and Zhou Guanyu?
I mean, they're familiar with one another. That wouldn't be impossible. I think it's possible. I think the only thing Zhou Guanyu's got going against him right now is his performance. It wasn't stellar. He had some good moments, but the consistency was really lacking. And if you're putting him up against the same driver he was up against, like, you kind of already know how that will pan out, or have a good prediction of how it'll pan out. When it comes to a bunch of the other people on that list, and like you said, the Americans, Cadillac have said that they would love to put an American in that car, and hopefully one day, if not their debut day, one day that is their goal, is to put an American in that car. But they also said they're not going to just stick an American in that car for the sake of them being American. I think if anybody has a really solid chance, I think Colton Herta does. The ties that Cadillac have to IndyCar and NASCAR are much stronger, and those lines of communication are probably a little bit more open than they would be with the likes of like Mercedes or AlphaTauri. It was AlphaTauri, or like Stake F1. So like the connection is probably stronger in that area, and those communication lines are probably way more open. But yeah, it would be interesting to see someone from IndyCar make that jump to F1. It would be cool, but are they willing to take that risk? I don't know. Also, when you're putting together a new team, if they go the Valtteri Bottas and Zhou Guanyu route, it's good to have people with an experience, because you need to build that car. You need someone with experience to give you the feedback and the proper information that you need from the driver to make the car better and build it. So that's what does worry me a little bit about bringing a rookie in there, especially if they go like someone with the IndyCar who's never, driven in the Formula Series before. It could cause a little kink in the road there when it comes to building a successful race car. But yeah, the Zhou Guanyu thing, interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah, it's a cool fact that as I said, I only learned today, and I was like, I have to tell you about this, because I do think that it does make it interesting. Like, if we didn't have that context, it would not make sense at all, I would think, to put him in that car. But just because that is his manager, it's like, is he going to choose his own driver? Like, in the way that, Lawrence Stroll chooses Lance repeatedly, even though he does not give the results needed. But yeah, I do agree with you on that, in that, is it really going to work having an IndyCar driver come over to Formula One? And the last time that we saw something like this was Nick de Vries, who was Formula E world champion, came into F1 and did not give the results and was out within half a season. And I think there is that little bit of fear of if you take someone who hasn't progressed from F3 and F2 to F1 and have gone and done other things, are they going to be where you need them to be? And what is it going to be like if they've been out of the car for a while? So for example, if we look at Felipe Drugovich, I think he won Formula 2, I think it now was 2022. So it's been a while. It could have been 2023, but I want to say 2022. And he's pretty much been out of the car since then. He's not had a full seat anywhere. He's been reserve driver for Aston Martin, and he's he's done little bits of other things. He's jumped over to Formula E for some tests and made his debut this year. I know he's done a little bit of endurance racing. So there's other opportunities, but it's also a massive risk taking someone who hasn't had a full seat for a long time. Although he's had great simulator experience, which I think is actually really beneficial to building a team, I think they need to have someone in that role. So I'm thinking that maybe someone like him or Jack Crawford might move into kind of that development role, reserve driver role, to help build that team up and be back at base, putting in those hours in the simulator, I think ultimately is what they need as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if those names come back up for that role. But I think in terms of the actual seat, I do think we are kind of the biggest names. I think the top three that I would say so far at the moment are Sergio Perez, Valtteri Bottas and Colton Herta. But I do agree with you around the Sergio Perez kind of predicament. I don't know enough about the politics of that, and I know that there's been some drama within IndyCar the last few weeks regarding that as well. So I feel I can't really properly give my say on it because I genuinely don't know enough. So I would say out of the three, then maybe the kind of the dynamic that it could be, the jury that it could be right now. Things might change. We still have time for it to change. We're kind of entering silly season. Hasn't fully kicked off yet, but usually starts off around summer break. So this could be when things change. But I think right now it could be Valtteri Bottas and Colton Herta. How would you feel, Brianna, about that lineup?
Valtteri Bottas, I feel good about. I think he's still got more to give. I think he believes in himself as well, and I think he'd be a great asset. He was with Mercedes through that whole kind of build of, not whole, but a big chunk of that building of that car, progressing it, and I think that's what they need, and I think that's why he would be a good fit for them. Maybe he'll become an honorary American in the process. I don't know. He seems to spend a lot of time in Colorado, so maybe he is the perfect fit brand-wise. But yeah, I think he would be a great pick and for them. For Colton Herta, I mean, I think bringing an American in and giving him a chance would be awesome. But to be honest with you, I don't think on your first honorary season, I think you need to give yourself the best chance. And I think that's with two experienced drivers. So as much as I would love to see him in there, maybe just not right now. Maybe in a little bit. But yeah, we'll see. That's how I feel about that lineup. But I don't know when we'll hear news. Everyone keeps saying soon, we'll hear it soon. And then we don't hear anything.
Yeah. I do agree with you about the experienced driver and more just kind of thinking about the budgets that Cadillac are going to have. And I don't know if right now, off the bat, they could be able to afford two very experienced drivers. And if they don't go with Colton Herta, then even though I had a list of 11 possible people, I'm not sure who that other experienced driver would be, aside from Sergio Perez. But as you said, from a branding and marketing point of view, might not be the best route to go down. So hopefully we will hear soon. I don't know when soon is, and I think that the word soon can mean anything. It can mean tomorrow, or it can mean 9 months' time. I'm hoping it's going to be within kind of the next few months before the season ends. I'm hoping that maybe, let's say, I'm going to go November. Before November, we're going to find out who is going to be in that seat.
I was just going to say, do you think it'll happen around COTA?
Ooh.
Or Vegas?
That's a shout. I don't know why COTA's screaming to me more. I feel like when you think of Cadillac, COTA kind of gives the vibe that Cadillac give, where Vegas to me doesn't so much. Yeah. Does that make sense?
COTA is straight up Americana. It is America. It's in Texas of all places. So, I mean, you don't get any more America than Texas. And then, I don't know, Vegas. I mean, Cadillac, as a brand, definitely has its roots and some history in Vegas. Especially back in the day, for sure. But fun fact, after I got married, I was driven in an old vintage Cadillac to my Cadillac convertible to my reception. So that's my connection with Cadillac. But really quick too, you mentioned budget. I think it's really important to mention, like, we're looking at, like, we keep comparing it to Haas because obviously it's the only other American team on the grid. But Haas's bucket of money they had to pull from versus Cadillac's bucket of money they have to pull from, two totally different situations. We're looking at Haas, which is just a racing brand, and they also make machines and other things, manufacturing. But Cadillac, I mean, you're backed by GM. I mean, you've got some big money behind you here. So their budget will probably be way bigger than Haas ever had, to be honest with you. So I just wanted to bring that up. It popped up in my head as you were saying that.
No, that is very true. I think it's just in my mind of, like, you still have a whole car to build from scratch. You have nothing to go off of, not like the other teams do. You've not won any championships or finished in a certain position to be able to, like, bring in some extra money. Like, you have literally got your team, and you need to source everybody, from team principal, which I know has now been chosen, to engineers, to media people. Like, literally the whole entire team needs to be sourced. And that's why I'm like, that's what worries me. Like, everyone else is kind of ready to go. They have nothing, and they're building from the ground up. And that's obviously Haas did the same thing, and they had a much smaller budget, so, like, it is possible.
Yeah.
But that's why I don't feel like straight off debut season they could get in the two of the most experienced F1 drivers of that list into those cars.
Yeah. I mean, the good thing is, though, they have the resources for manufacturing. They've got the know-how, they've got people, they've got connections on, like, and facilities, like, to have some of these, not all, but some of these things made. So, but you're right, like, there's so much to build, not just a car. There's so much to build. And part of me wonders, like, what's already been built that you're just hiding, you know? Like, not showing your full hand.
That's a good point, actually. And I think I'm correct in this, that Andretti initially built a factory at Silverstone, which now Cadillac have taken over, I believe. That could be incorrect, but I'm pretty sure that was the case. So already that is something where they didn't have to build it. It was already done for them, because Andretti was so convinced that they were going to get into F1 that they'd already built their factory before it was even confirmed. And then they weren't allowed in Formula One. So Cadillac now have it. But that's something, again, where they didn't have to build that themselves. Like, it's kind of not been handed to them, but it was something that they could quite easily tick off the to-do list.
Yes. Yeah, you're very, very true. Poor Andretti. Poor Andretti.
At least they have lots of history and success in other championships, specifically IndyCar, but it wasn't destined for them to kind of be the sole team that was going to come into F1. At least they've kind of, under their, I think they're called, like, TWG. That could be so wrong, but they kind of have partnered with them, and that's involved in Cadillac. So they're kind of slightly involved in this deal here.
But just not in the way they probably wanted.
No, unfortunately not. But I think that is everything that we had for today. Have I missed anything, Brianna? Is there any final thoughts that you have?
Not that I know. Man, I'm just so excited. Like, sometimes I kind of forget that 2026 is not that far away anymore, and that we're getting a whole new team in 2026. So I'm glad we kind of broke this down, because also with all the commotion of the season, like, we get all these little bits and pieces and news about Cadillac, but it's all sprinkled out and you kind of forget about it. So I'm really glad that you were like, hey, let's do a review on Cadillac today, because I needed it for sure, and I'm sure a lot of other people did too. So more news to come, and maybe we'll have a part 2 on this when things start really ramping up on Cadillac and we start finding out more.
Absolutely. And 2026 is not only going to be a big year because of Cadillac's entrance, but also it is a year of regulation changes, and I'm very excited to see what 2026 brings. Who's going to kind of take success out of this? Who's going to drop back? I think a lot can be said for next season, and Cadillac coming in is just kind of like the cherry on top of the cake. So next year there'll be 11 teams on the grid. Very exciting.
Yes.
But for now, thank you very much for listening. This is the Fast Lane Collective. We'll see you in the next one.
Bye.
Hello, fly chick coming through. Nice to meet ya, glad you came too.